3 years after a little girl stopped speaking, the first word she said sent her stepmother to prison. That little girl wasn't mine by blood, but she was my whole heart. And the woman she exposed was the same woman who framed me and watched while I was dragged out of a mansion in handcuffs. My name is Olivia, and this is the story of how a billionaire's fiancée tried to erase me, and how an 8-year-old with a notebook and a broken little voice brought the truth back. If it were you and the world believed the rich liar over you, would you still fight? Or would you give up and disappear? Before I tell you everything, take a second and imagine this. The cops are at the door. Your boss is staring at you like he's never seen you before, and the only person who knows the truth is a child who hasn't said a word in years. That's where I was. That's where this started for me. Back then, my days started before the sun even thought about getting up. I lived in this tiny guest house behind the Anderson mansion in Beverly Hills. One small room, a narrow bed, a little bathroom with a leaky faucet, and a window that looked straight at the back of a house worth more money than I'd see in 10 lifetimes. I'd wake up to the alarm at 5 a.m., pull on my gray housekeeping uniform, scrape my hair back into a ponytail, and walk across the cold grass with the sprinklers still ticking in the dark. The main house at that hour was quiet, almost holy. The marble floors were cold under my shoes, the huge windows still black, the air smelling like yesterday's coffee and furniture polish. I'd flip on the kitchen light, listen to the soft hum of the fridge and the coffee machine warming up, and start my routine. Chop fruit. Start coffee. Lay out toast. Check the fridge. Make sure everything was just right, because in houses like that, everything has to be perfect before the people who own it ever come downstairs. And then, like clockwork, I'd hear the softest sound on those big stairs. Tiny bare feet, careful and slow, like the house itself scared her. I'd turn around and see her. I'd turn, Emily, 8 years old. But she looked smaller in her white nightgown, like someone had pressed pause on her whole life. Hair a little messy, eyes too serious for a kid, lips pressed together, like she was holding back a whole storm inside. "Good morning, my little sunflower." I'd whisper every single morning like it was a prayer. I'd slice a piece of cantaloupe into a heart and hold it out to her, just between us. She never answered with words, not back then. She'd just take the fruit, look at it, then look at me, and if I was lucky, one corner of her mouth would twitch up. That tiny, almost smile. You have no idea how much power that had over my whole day. See, Emily hadn't spoken since her mother Rachel died. 3 years of silence. Doctors said selective mutism, therapists said. Trauma response, her father called it a phase. The only thing I knew was that this little girl carried something too heavy for her small chest, and nobody in that house really knew how to sit down and carry it with her, except me. While I moved around the kitchen, I'd hum this old lullaby my own mom used to sing when we didn't have enough food and too many bills. Little white dove flying home. I'd keep my voice soft, like it was just between us. Most mornings it worked. Her shoulders would drop just a bit, like she could breathe again. She'd lean against the counter, nibbling her fruit heart, watching me like I was the only safe thing in that giant cold kitchen. And then the spell would break. Emily, that voice. Sharp, smooth, full of judgment wrapped in silk. Victoria, if you've ever met someone whose perfume arrives 10 seconds before they do, that was her. Perfect robe, perfect nails. The kind of woman who looks like she woke up in full makeup. She'd stand in the doorway with this expression that said the whole world existed to please her. "Olivia has work to do," she'd say, like I wasn't even there. And Emily, breakfast in the kitchen is for staff. You eat in the dining room, darling. Emily would stiffen, that tiny bit of light gone in a second. She'd look at the heart-shaped fruit in her hand. then at me like she was apologizing for something that wasn't her fault. Then she'd walk toward Victoria without a word. "Yes, Mrs. Anderson," I'd murmur, eyes down. I was just giving her a small snack. Victoria never really spoke to me. She spoke around me, through me. To her, I was part of the furniture, just a useful object that sometimes talked too much. Here's the thing. Nobody writes in job descriptions. When you're the help in a house like that, you see everything. The cracks in the marriage, the secrets in the medicine cabinet, the way people treat waiters when they think nobody's watching. You see who they really are. Michael, Emily's dad, was a different kind of distant. He'd come down a little later, still tapping through emails on his phone, tie draped around his neck. Hair slightly messy from sleep. Handsome in that exhausted corporate way, always thinking 5 steps ahead everywhere, but the room he was physically in. "Morning, Olivia," he'd say, eyes still on the screen. "How's Emily today?" She ate a little fruit. I'd answered gently, because I knew that was the only part he'd really hear. "Good," he'd mutter, then sip his coffee, already back inside whatever deal or meeting his brain was chewing on. Victoria would glide in, kiss his cheek, smile like a magazine cover. "Don't work too late tonight." She'd purr. "Emily misses you." He'd sigh, say, "I'll try," and we all knew he probably wouldn't. Work and grief had eaten holes in him he didn't quite know how to fill. When they both left, the house would go quiet again. And that's when the real Emily came back. One afternoon, the sun was perfect. Soft, warm, coming through the windows just right. I found Emily sitting on the living room floor, workbook open, pencil in hand, not writing a single word, just filling the margins with tiny doodles instead. "You want to work in the garden today?" I asked her. "The weather's too pretty to waste inside." Her eyes lit up like someone flipped a switch. She jumped up, grabbed her books, and followed me outside without saying a word. We laid a blanket under the jacaranda tree, flowers falling like purple snow, the air smelling like spring and cut grass. Emily sat cross-legged with her homework, and I folded laundry beside her, humming that lullaby again, not really thinking about it. She froze, pencil in the air, then looked up at me like the song had reached something deep inside her. She grabbed a clean sheet of paper, and instead of writing, she started drawing. Me and her under that tree. Her little face in the drawing had this big, wide smile. When she finished, she held it up, eyes shining, and for the first time in weeks, her real smile broke through on her actual face. It was like watching the sun punch through a cloud. Then, of course, the clouds came back. "What is going on here?" Victoria again. Standing at the patio doors, arms crossed, eyes like ice. I jumped up. "Mrs. Anderson, Emily was just finishing her schoolwork. She doesn't need distractions." She snapped, walking straight over. She ripped the drawing right out of Emily's hands, crumpled it without even looking at it. "The help is here to work. Emily, to your room." Emily's face fell apart, but she didn't argue. She just walked away, shoulders shaking, silent as always. Something in me snapped that day. Not enough to quit, not enough to yell. I needed that job too badly, and I loved that kid too much, but enough that every little look from Victoria after that felt like a warning. That night, she took it up a level, when the house was quiet, and I was in the kitchen wiping down counters that were already clean. I heard her voice drifting from the living room, soft but staged, like she knew walls carried sound. "Michael, I'm worried about Olivia," she said. I froze, my hand still on a dish towel. "Why?" he asked. "She's been incredible with Emily." "That's exactly the problem," she sighed. "She's too close, too attached. Sometimes I feel like she's trying to replace someone." She didn't have to say Rachel's name, but we all heard it anyway. I could picture his shoulders tightening, the guilt, the confusion. That's how manipulation works, by the way. It doesn't scream, it whispers just enough to plant a seed. And that little seed of doubt was all she needed. Now here's where everything slides from uncomfortable into straight-up nightmare. Stick around, because what happened next will blow your mind. Later that night, when the lights were off and the house was supposed to be asleep, Victoria went to work. I didn't see it with my own eyes, but I learned every detail later, from police reports, from her own confession, from Emily's drawings. She slipped into the master bedroom closet, the one that smelled like cologne and cedar and old heartbreak. Behind some boxes and designer handbags, there was a small safe. Michael thought only he knew about it. He'd put his most personal things in there: Rachel's letters, a couple of old watches, and one particular pair of earrings. Victoria punched in the code like it was nothing. Emily's birthday. Perfect. Inside, on a little velvet tray, lay Rachel's emerald earrings. They were stunning. Dark green, heavy, glowing in the light. But more than that, they were supposed to be Emily's when she was old enough. They were the last piece of her mother she had left. Victoria picked them up, turned them in her fingers, watched the light bounce through the stone, and whispered, "Perfect, Rachel." But not in a nice way. Then she went downstairs, took out 2 sleeping pills, crushed them between 2 spoons, and tipped the powder into a mug of warm milk. She carried that milk up to Emily's room, with a soft smile, tucked her in like the world's most loving stepmother, and watched as those drugged eyelids got heavy a little too quickly. When Emily was out, really out, Victoria stepped into the hallway, looked around, then crossed the yard to my little guest house. My room was dark and small. She opened my dresser, pushed aside my folded clothes, and shoved those emerald earrings deep into the bottom drawer. And this is the part that almost ruined her plan. As she came back into the main house, she froze. In the hallway, leaning against the wall, swaying a little, was Emily. Half awake, half asleep, eyes glassy, feet unsteady. She watched Victoria walk out of my door, watched her cross the hall, watched her move like a thief in her own house. Too drugged to ask questions, too quiet to scream, but her eyes were wide open. The next morning, the sky was gray in that weird Beverly Hills way, where you know it'll burn off by noon. But for a few hours, everything feels heavier. I woke up like usual, tied my hair back, shook off a bad feeling I couldn't name, and went in to start breakfast. I was pouring coffee when I heard it. A scream. Not a little scream. A big one. Staged, but good enough to fool anyone who didn't know better. "Oh my God." Victoria's voice echoed from upstairs. "Michael." "The emerald earrings, Rachel's earrings, they're missing." The mug almost slipped from my hand. She came down a second later, one hand on her chest robe, perfectly arranged eyes, fake wet. "They're gone," she gasped. "The ones Rachel left for Emily. They were in the safe. Now they're gone." Michael came rushing in barefoot in pajama pants and a t-shirt, face washed in panic. "That's impossible," he said. "No one knows the combination." "Someone does," she choked out. "Someone in this house. I wanted to show them to Emily today. It's been 4 years since Rachel passed, and now they're gone." Silence. Thick, charged, dangerous. "We have to search everywhere," she declared. "Every room." Now, at that moment, I was scared, but I still honestly believed the truth would protect me. Yeah, that happened. I really thought innocence was enough. We turned that house upside down. Drawers open, closets emptied, couch cushions on the floor. I searched like my life depended on it, because it did, even though I didn't fully understand how. Then from upstairs came the line I still hear in my nightmares. "Michael, come here." Now, her voice. From my room, everything inside me went cold. I ran up the stairs, heart pounding. There she was, standing in my tiny room like she owned that too, holding the emerald earrings in her hand. They were in her dresser. She whispered, voice trembling just enough for show. "Hidden at the bottom." "No," I said, barely breathing. "No, I never touched them. Someone put them there, I swear." Michael looked at me like he'd never seen me before. All the little pieces of doubt that had been growing in his head finally snapped together into a picture, The wrong picture, but a picture that made sense from where he stood. "Olivia," he said. Voice breaking. "How could you?" I didn't. I begged. "You know me. You know. I would never steal from you. From Rachel, from Emily. Someone set me up. Please, you have to believe me." But all he could see was what Victoria wanted him to see. The earrings in my room, the wife-to-be crying, the maid begging. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, pulling out his phone. "I have to call the police. Let me ask you straight. If it were you standing in that doorway, who would you believe? The billionaire's fiancé crying over his dead wife's jewelry, or the maid from the guest house saying she was framed? 20 minutes later, the street outside the mansion was full of flashing lights. Neighbors peered through their curtains, watching like it was a TV show, not my life. The officers asked a few questions, but it didn't matter. They already had their story. They took my wrists, turned me around, clicked the cuffs on like they'd done it 1,000 times because they had. As they walked me out, I looked up and saw Emily on the staircase. She was gripping the railing so hard, her fingers were white. When she saw the handcuffs, something snapped in her eyes. She ran down a couple of steps, reaching out. "Emily." I cried, twisting around as far as I could. "You know the truth? Tell them, sweetheart. Please tell them." Her mouth opened, her little chest heaved, and nothing came out. Not a word. Just silent, shaking sobs. Victoria swept in behind her, wrapped her arms around Emily, pulled her back like I was some kind of monster. "Stay back, sweetheart," she murmured. "Olivia can't hurt you anymore." She shut the door behind me with her own hand. The station was gray and smelled like old coffee cheap cologne, and too many bad days. They sat me in a metal chair, chained me to a metal table, and showed me pictures of the earrings, like I hadn't seen them already hanging from Victoria's hand. "The evidence against you is substantial," the detective said in that flat voice of someone who's just trying to clear their caseload. "The earrings were found hidden in your room." "I didn't take them," I said. "Someone planted them." "Who would do that?" he asked, even though I could tell he didn't really care what my answer was. I hesitated, because I knew how it sounded. But what else did I have to lose at that point? "Victoria Anderson," I said. "She hates how close I am with Emily. She's jealous of our bond. She doesn't want Emily to love anyone but her." He raised his eyebrows and actually smiled a little like, "Oh, we've got a dramatic one." My public defender, some overworked guy who didn't even bother to make eye contact with me, flipped through my file and sighed. "My advice," he said, "is to plead guilty. We might negotiate a lighter sentence." "Guilty," I snapped. "For something I didn't do," he shrugged. "Juries like simple stories. Rich widow, dead wife's, earrings made with access. It's an easy narrative. You fight this, it could get ugly." "Oh, I'm sorry," I said, feeling that bitterness rise up. "Is this your life or mine?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Then the door opened, and my little sister Sarah came in like a hurricane. Hair pulled back in a messy bun, eyes red purse hanging off one shoulder, breathing hard like she'd run there. "Olivia," she cried, wrapping her arms around me as far as the cuffs would allow. "Oh my God. Liv, I'm so sorry." I talked to Mrs. Evans. She lent me money. I sold my jewelry. I have your bail. That's the thing about real love. It shows up even when it's broke and scared and wearing the same jeans 3 days in a row. A few hours later, they unhooked me from the table, strapped an ankle monitor around my leg, handed me a stack of papers, and told me I was not allowed within feet of the Anderson family. I was out technically, but every beep from that bracelet felt like the system whispering, "We're watching you." "How's Emily?" I asked Sarah in the car, staring out the window at streets that suddenly felt unfamiliar. "We're going to find out," she said quietly. And I believed her because my sister is not the kind of woman who lets go once she bites down on the truth. Meanwhile, back in that big house, life did not go back to normal. It just got weirder. 2 days after my arrest, Emily was at the dining table staring at a bowl of cereal she wouldn't touch. It was the kind of cereal that comes in a pretty box with a French name. Nothing like the pancakes I used to make her with powdered sugar that got all over her cheeks. "Emily, honey, please try a little." "Victoria," cooed, pushing the bowl toward her. "It's your favorite." Emily didn't even blink. Her eyes were fixed on the empty chair next to her, the one where I used to sit while she traced shapes in the condensation on her juice glass. Michael walked in dark circles under his eyes, tie already hanging around his neck like a noose. Still nothing, he asked. No, Victoria sighed. Poor thing. She was too attached to Olivia. It wasn't healthy. Michael frowned because maybe some part of him knew that wasn't right. But guilt is loud, and he had plenty of that already. Across town, Sarah was starting to do her own kind of detective work. She took a cleaning job at a house right next door to the Andersons. A woman named Linda, the kind of neighbor who always knows what's going on without ever looking like she's trying. "I heard what happened," Linda whispered while handing Sarah some cleaning supplies. "Terrible thing. That maid, stealing from them like that." Sarah swallowed hard. "Do you know anything about that night?" "Anything at all?" Linda frowned, looked around like the walls might listen, then leaned closer. "You know the night those earrings went missing. I woke up around 2:15. I heard footsteps, soft ones upstairs pacing back and forth. It was weird enough that I checked the clock. Somebody was sneaking around that night. Somebody who wasn't supposed to be. Somebody who wasn't me." That tiny detail, 2:15 a.m., lodged itself in Sarah's mind like a nail. A couple days later, Linda came back with more news, like she was dropping off gossip and groceries at the same time. "You should talk to the janitor at Beverly Hills Elementary," she said. "Emily's teacher is worried about her. Something about her drawings." Drawings. Sarah went to the school, told them she was Emily's former nanny's sister, begged for 5 minutes with the teacher. Miss Parker, a tired woman with ink on her fingers and kindness in her eyes, sat her down at a little table and pulled out a stack of paper. "I'm concerned about Emily," she said. "She doesn't speak, but she repeats images, over and over, like she's stuck." Every page told the same story in thick crayon lines. A woman in handcuffs, police cars, a little girl watching from a doorway, her tears drawn as huge blue drops. The night of my arrest, over and over and over again. Then Miss Parker pulled out one more drawing, different from the rest. In this one, there was a woman with long, dark hair standing in front of a dresser. She was holding something small and shiny. In the hallway, a little girl watched eyes wide. "It might just be her imagination," Miss Parker said softly. "But it feels like a memory, doesn't it?" Sarah stared at the drawing, heart pounding. She knew that hair. She knew that dresser. She knew that child. When she brought that drawing home and put it in my hands, I felt like the room tilted. "This is my room," I whispered. "That's my dresser. And that's Victoria. And Emily." Emily saw everything. We both knew what that meant. The night I was taken away in handcuffs, the truth was standing right there in the hallway, about 4 feet tall, wearing a nightgown and blinking against drugged sleep. My poor girl. I choked out, pressing the drawing to my chest. She must have tried to tell them, and nobody listened. "Not this time," Sarah said. "This one survived. She didn't get to rip this one up." And that was the moment something inside me flipped from broken to burning. "I have to see her," I said. "Olivia." "You can't," Sarah protested. "The restraining order, the ankle monitor. They'll lock you up for real if you get caught anywhere near that house." "I don't care," I said. "Emily is alone with that woman. She's drawing the truth over and over, and nobody is listening. I have to at least let her see my face, let her know I didn't abandon her." Sarah stared at me for a long second, then nodded. "Okay," she said, "but we do this smart." A couple days later, I stood behind a massive oak tree outside Beverly Hills Elementary chart, slamming against my ribs. The ankle monitor buzzed like an angry bee, warning me I was close to the line. Kids poured out onto the yard for recess, yelling, laughing, trading snacks, running in little packs. And then there she was, Emily. She was sitting alone on a concrete bench under a sad little tree notebook in her lap, head bent low. Her uniform looked too big, her hair a little tangled, her shoulders hunched like she was trying to shrink out of the world. She was drawing. Of course she was. I walked slowly to the chain-link fence, fingers wrapping around the cold metal. "Miss Parker," I called softly when I saw the teacher nearby. She turned and froze. "You're Olivia Harper," she said. "Yes," I said, hands shaking. "Please, I don't want trouble. I just need to make sure Emily is okay. I'll stay behind the fence. I promise." Miss Parker hesitated. You could see the battle on her face, the story she'd heard about me versus the woman standing in front of her with desperate eyes and an ankle bracelet blinking. "Stay behind the fence," she finally said. "Just a minute." Emily looked up then. Her eyes met mine, and the notebook slipped from her hands and fell open on the ground. For a heartbeat, she didn't move. Then she ran. She pressed her palms hard against the fence. I pressed mine on the other side, the metal cold between us. "Oh, Emily." I breathed, tears already running down my face. "I'm so sorry. I never meant to leave you, sweetheart. I never meant for any of this to happen." Her lips trembled. Her throat moved. You could see every muscle in her body trying to push sound out. Her face turned red, her eyes squeezed shut and still. Nothing. Miss Parker stood nearby, stunned. "I've never seen her try this hard to speak," she whispered. "Can I see her drawing?" I asked. Miss Parker walked over, picked up the notebook, and handed it through the fence. I opened it. There it was again. My room. My dresser. Victoria's dark hair. The earrings Emily in the hallway. Only this time, the lines were sharper. The colors bolder, like she was trying to make the memory louder. "Emily," I whispered, looking up. "You saw everything, didn't you?" She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You know I didn't steal anything," I said. "You know I'm innocent." She nodded again, harder, gripping the fence like if she let go, the truth would fall away with it. And that's when the devil showed up. "What is happening here?" Victoria's voice cut across the playground like a slap. She stood on the sidewalk, heels clicking, sunglasses on, fury barely contained. "Mrs. Anderson," Miss Parker started. Olivia was just... "You are violating a restraining order." Victoria snapped at me, already pulling out her phone. "I'm calling the police." "Please," I said, for what felt like the 1,000th time. "Emily saw what you did. She knows the truth." Emily started shaking her head, trying again to push sound out of her throat. But it was like her voice was still locked behind that wall. Victoria stormed over to her. "Give me that notebook," she demanded. Emily clutched it to her chest, shaking. "Emily." Victoria hissed low enough that only we could hear. "Don't make me say it again." "Hand it over." Before she could rip it away, another voice cut in. "Mrs. Anderson," the school principal said. Arms crossed. "Could I speak with you in my office, please?" Victoria straightened up instantly. Smile snapping back into place like a mask. "Of course," she said sweetly. Then shot Emily a look so full of venom it made my stomach turn. Emily flinched. She knew what that look meant. Tonight was going to be bad. And me? I ran. The ankle monitor screamed. I ran anyway, ran all the way home with my lungs burning and my heart pounding. I burst through our apartment door, almost falling. Victoria saw me. I gasped. She called the police. "They're going to arrest me again." Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh God, Liv." "But listen," I said, grabbing her shoulders. "Emily tried to talk today. She tried. She gave me a drawing. She saw everything that night. We have proof now. Real proof. A drawing, Sarah said, slowly, thinking it through, won't be enough in court. Not by itself. They'll say it's imagination. Yeah, I said, if it stays in a folder. But what if they see it in front of everyone? What if we force them to look at it when they can't pretend it doesn't exist? She stared at me. You're serious? Victoria is hosting that big celebration tonight, I said. The business party, remember? That house is going to be full of people with money, people with cameras, people who love a scandal more than they love the truth. Security will be busy distracted. You can get inside as a waitress. I know every back hallway in that place, every side door. If you give me a signal, I can get to Emily before Victoria shuts her down again. If they catch you, Sarah whispered. They'll bury you this time. I took a breath. Emily is 8, I said. She already watched me get dragged out of that house once. She watched the real thief put those earrings in my dresser. She tried to tell them, and nobody listened. If I don't go back for her, what kind of person does that make me? She went quiet for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, she said. Then we end it tonight. Fast forward a few hours. The Anderson estate was lit up like a palace. Chandeliers glowing in every window, music floating out into the warm night, cars lined up in the driveway that cost more than my entire childhood. Wealthy guests drifted through the front doors in long dresses and pressed suits. Glasses of champagne, already in hand, laughing like nothing bad ever happened to people like them. Inside the main room buzzed with conversation. Waiters moved through the crowd with silver trays. Michael stood with a group of business partners, forcing a smile, raising his glass, when they talked about the new project that was going to make them all even richer. But his eyes kept drifting upstairs to the railing, where Emily sat alone, feet not quite touching the floor sketchbook in her lap. Drawing, always drawing. The truth in crayon that nobody had fully looked at yet. Victoria floated through the room in a navy gown, pearls at her throat, the perfect hostess. She laughed. She charmed, she introduced Michael to important people, but every couple of minutes her eyes would flick up to the stairs, checking on Emily like she was watching a ticking bomb. In the middle of all that, someone new slipped in from the kitchen. White blouse, black skirt hair, pulled back tray in her hands. Sarah. Her hands were shaking just a little, but she kept moving quiet, invisible, just another server in a white shirt. She reached the center of the room, took a breath, and then, accidentally, let the tray tilt. Glasses crashed to the hardwood champagne, splashed everywhere, the sound slicing through the music. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. A little gasp moved across the room. For heaven's sake, Victoria snapped. Can someone teach the staff how to walk? It's fine, Michael said, gently reaching for her arm. It's just an accident. While everyone's eyes were on the mess on the floor, Sarah lifted her hand. Just a little fingers flicking in the direction of the backyard. The signal. Outside, just beyond the hedge, I was waiting, heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my teeth. When I saw that tiny motion through the glass, I moved. I slipped through the back kitchen door, blending in with the catering staff in my dark clothes. Nobody looked twice. Everyone was too busy throwing towels on the spilled champagne and grabbing fresh glasses. I took the servants' staircase, the one regular guests never see. I'd taken those stairs 1,000 times with laundry baskets and vacuum cleaners. I knew exactly which step squeaked and how to lean, so it didn't. Halfway up, I saw her, Emily. She was sitting on the stairs, halfway between the party and her room, like she was caught between two worlds she didn't belong to. Her sketchbook was open on her knees, pencil in her hand, lines shaking on the page. She looked up and saw me. The pencil dropped, bounced down a step. I put a finger to my lips. Shh, I whispered. She stood up slowly, like she thought if she moved too fast, I'd disappear. Then she ran, closing that little distance between us in a second, throwing her arms around my waist so hard it knocked the air out of me. "I'm here," I whispered into her hair. "I'm here, sweetheart. I'm not leaving you again." She pulled back, grabbed her sketchbook, and flipped to the page she'd been working on. It was the same scene. My room, the dresser, Victoria with the earrings. But this time she'd added something new. A little version of herself in the hallway, pointing straight at Victoria, like she was finally ready to accuse her, even if her voice was still locked away. "You want them to see this, don't you?" I asked softly. She nodded, hard eyes fierce for the first time. "Then let's show them," I said. Together, we walked up the rest of the stairs hand in hand, my heart beating so loud I could barely hear the music anymore. At the top of the staircase, we stepped out where everyone could see us. The music stuttered to a stop. Voices faded. People turned. Phones came up almost immediately, because that's what people do now, right? They record before they understand. Whispers started. "Is that the maid? Wasn't she arrested?" "How is she here?" Victoria turned, saw me, and all the color drained from her face. Michael froze, glass halfway to his lips. "Everyone," I said, voice shaking but strong enough to carry. "Please, I just need a minute to speak." "Michael, call the police," Victoria shrieked, pushing past a couple of guests to get closer. "She's trespassing. She's unstable. She needs to be removed from this house." He reached into his pocket habit more than conviction, but his eyes were on his daughter, not me, because Emily wasn't hiding. She was standing next to me, holding my hand, notebook clutched to her chest, and for the first time in years, there was no fear on her face, just determination. "Victoria framed me," I said. "She planted the earrings in my room." Gasps rippled through the crowd like a wave. "You're delusional," Victoria snapped. "You were found guilty in court." "Olivia, you should be grateful my fiancé even gave you a job in the first place. Now you break in and crash our event. This is exactly why people like you." I was set up, I cut her off, and Emily saw it happen. Silence. Heavy electric. Every eye in the room swung to the little girl in the white dress. The girl who hadn't spoken in 3 years. Emily's breathing picked up, her shoulders shaking. She looked up at me. I squeezed her hand. "You can do this," I whispered. "I'm right here." Victoria lunged forward, hand outstretched. "Emily, come here right now," she ordered. For the first time ever, Emily stepped back from her. She peeled her hand out of Victoria's grip, clutching the notebook like a shield, and walked toward the railing where her father stood. Michael dropped his glass. It shattered at his feet, but he didn't even flinch. He sank to his knees in front of her, eyes already wet. "Emily," he whispered. "Baby, I'm here. I'm right here. What is it? Tell me." Her lips trembled. Her throat moved. And then it happened. "Dad!" she croaked. Voice cracked and raw, like it hadn't been used in years, because it hadn't. The room exploded. People gasped out loud, some crying, already phones zooming in. Michael's face just fell apart. "I'm here," he said, grabbing her hands. "I'm right here. What is it, sweetheart?" "Mom didn't lose earrings," she forced out, each word like a stone she had to lift with both hands. "What do you mean?" he asked, voice shaking. Emily turned very slowly and lifted her arm. She pointed straight at Victoria. "She put them in Olivia's room," she said. You could feel the entire room turn in that moment. It was like the sound in the air changed. Conversation stopped, even in the back. People who'd looked bored 5 minutes earlier now looked like they couldn't breathe. "You're confused, sweetie," Victoria stammered. "Your therapist said trauma can make you imagine things. You're mixing up memories. This woman is confusing you. He's dangerous." Emily's small body straightened. Her voice, still raspy, rose up out of her like a wave finally crashing. "You lied," she shouted. "The chandeliers." Look with it. She opened her notebook, flipped to the drawing, and held it up as high as she could. My dresser. The earrings. Victoria. Little Emily. Watching. Michael looked at the drawing, then at Victoria, then at me, then back to his daughter. You could see every puzzle piece in his mind click into place. Victoria, he said. Voice deadly quiet. Is this true? She backed up a step. Then another. Michael, listen to me. I did it for you. You, for us. She was taking Emily away from me. You were slipping. You were replacing Rachel. I had to protect our family. You don't understand. That was about as far as she got, because that's when the police walked in. They'd been called earlier. By Victoria, actually, when she saw me at the school, when she saw me in her house. But by the time they walked into that room and saw the scene in front of them, I wasn't the one they were looking at anymore. Ma'am, one officer said, stepping forward. We're going to need you to come with us. You're under arrest for evidence tampering, filing a false police report, and psychological abuse of a minor. No, she screamed. Michael, do something. I did this for you. For Emily. For us. But nobody moved. They turned her around, slipped the same metal around her wrists that they'd put on mine, and walked her out in front of her own guests. Mascara streaking down her face hair. Falling dress twisted the perfect image of a perfect life, shattered in a matter of minutes. Emily collapsed against me, sobbing. I held her with both arms like I wanted to glue her back together. Michael put his hand over his face and cried silently, all that guilt and blindness and shame finally breaking open. Let me ask you something. Do you think that was justice, or just another version of damage control? When the door closed behind Victoria and her screams faded down the hallway, the mansion felt like it had been emptied out. The guests were still there, but for a moment it was just us in that big room. Me, Emily, and Michael standing in the middle of a mess the three of us hadn't made, but now had to clean up. I'm so sorry. Michael choked, looking at both of us. Emily, baby, I didn't see what was happening to you. I didn't protect you. I let her. And Olivia, my God, I called the police on you. I let them put you in handcuffs. I thought, you thought I stole from you. I finished softly. He nodded, tears running down his face. You were trying to protect your daughter, I said. Any father would. You just started protecting her from the wrong person. I failed her, he said. Voice low. And I failed you. Victoria manipulated everyone I said. She started working on you long before those earrings ever left that safe. But you have a chance to fix it now. Not with words. With what you do next. He nodded, wiped his face, and took Emily's hand in one of his, and mine in the other. For the first time, I didn't feel like the help standing between the boss and his kid. I felt like someone who belonged there. The next morning, the detective who'd looked so bored in that interrogation room slid a paper across a desk to me. Ms. Harper, he said, more respectful. Now you are officially exonerated of all charges. Victoria Anderson has confessed. We've recovered her diary. Emily's testimony and drawings match her timeline exactly. You're clear. I stared at the word exonerated until it blurred. Sarah wrapped me in a hug so tight I squeaked. It's over, she whispered. You're free. I shook my head. I won't feel free until Emily does, I said. Back at the mansion, things felt different. The air didn't feel so heavy. The lights felt less harsh. It was like someone had opened a window that had been painted shut for years. Emily sat at the kitchen island fork in her hand plate full of pancakes. Real pancakes, fluffy and warm with powdered sugar and berries, not the cold cereal she'd been pushing away. More sugar, she said. Voice still raspy, but so much stronger than before. I laughed heart full. You got it, sweetheart, I said, dusting more sugar on top like we were having a tiny snowstorm on her plate. Michael leaned against the doorframe, watching us with a look I hadn't seen on his face before. Soft, open almost. Hopeful. She hasn't stopped talking since she woke up, he said, shaking his head. It's like she was waiting her whole life to use her voice. Emily grinned. "Olivia makes me brave," she said. I brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "You were always brave," I told her. "I just stood next to you while you remembered it." Later, Michael asked to talk to me in his study. Same room I used to dust, same shelves I used to wipe. Felt different now. He closed the door, swallowed hard, and said, "Olivia, I'd like you to come back. Not as staff, not as an employee, but as part of this family." I looked at him then, out the window, where I could see Emily in the yard, drawing with chalk on the stone path. "I love her," I said honestly. "You know that. But after everything that happened, the jail, the looks, the whispers, the ankle monitor, I need time. Time to trust that this house won't turn on me again." He nodded immediately. "Of course," he said. "Take all the time you need. Our door is open. Always." 3 months later, the garden was full of life. Flowers everywhere, sunlight bouncing off the pool, the air warm, but not too hot. Emily was riding a pink bike with training wheels up and down the path, legs pumping, braids flying. "Look, Olivia," she yelled. "I'm doing it. You're killing it." I yelled back, standing next to Michael, hands clasped, heart so full it actually hurt a little. After her victory lap, she jumped off the bike, ran over, grabbed my hand. "Come see what I made," she said, tugging me inside. In the kitchen on the fridge was a drawing. But this one was different from all the others. 3 figures hand in hand, under a bright blue sky. A tall man, a woman in a simple dress, a little girl between them, with a huge grin. Above them, in her careful handwriting, she'd written, "My real family." I put my hand over my mouth as tears flooded my eyes. "You won't leave again, right?" she asked. Hugging my waist, I knelt. So we were eye to eye. "As long as you need me, I'm here," I said. "I need you forever," she said, like it was the easiest truth in the world. 6 months after everything, we were in the garden planting tulips along the fence. Rachel's favorite. The soil was warm and soft, the sun just starting to go down. "Olivia," Emily asked, patting dirt over a bulb. "Yeah, baby. Is the truth always this scary?" I sat back on my heels, looked at the sky. "Sometimes," I said. "Sometimes it's the scariest thing of all. But it's also powerful. Even when people try to bury it, it has this way of pushing up through the cracks. Like these flowers, like my drawing," she asked with a small smile. "Exactly like your drawing," I said. "I'm glad the truth won," she said quietly. "Me too," I whispered, kissing the top of her head. "Me too." Upstairs in that big house that had seen so many lies and so many tears. Michael watched us from the window. His daughter alive again, talking, laughing, planting flowers in one hand and holding my hand with the other. His home finally felt like a home, not a museum for grief and pretense. So yeah, the rich woman who framed me went to prison. I got my name back. The little girl who couldn't speak found her voice and used it like a sword and a shield. On paper that looks like a happy ending. But here's the part that still sticks with me, and I want you to really think about this. Why did it take a child who hadn't spoken in 3 years, screaming you lied in front of a room full of rich people, for anyone to believe the Maid? Why were drawings and public humiliation necessary to do what basic decency should have done from day one? How many Olivias are out there right now being called liars because they don't have money, or the right last name, or the right address on their ID? If it were you on that staircase, champagne glass in hand, expensive shoes on your feet, would you have believed me when I said I was framed? Or would you have waited like everyone else until the little girl chose a side? Do you think justice was really served here? Or did everyone walk away too clean, except the one who got dragged away in cuffs? Would you have forgiven Michael? Or would you have walked out of that gate and never looked back? I genuinely want to know what you think. So if this story made you angry, or hopeful, or just a little bit more awake to how easily the powerful can twist the truth, don't just click on the next video and forget it. Drop a comment and tell me what would you have done in my place, and what do you think should happen to people like Victoria in real life. If you've ever had a moment where nobody believed you until it was almost too late, share it below. You know what I mean. Those times when the truth was in your hands and still somehow felt invisible. Your story might be the thing that gives somebody else the courage to speak up. Hit like if you stayed with me to the end. Subscribe if you want more real stories the world likes to look away from, and share this with someone who still thinks money automatically equals honesty. Because at the end of the day, it wasn't a judge or a lawyer or a billionaire who saved me. It was a little girl with a crayon and a shaky voice who finally decided that silence had done enough damage.